Morning. I thought I'd start doing a kind of video diary with this car. I did something similar with that gold Rover 800 Vitesse I had, and I think it was quite useful for some people, and it was also nice for me to look back on, to sort of, a bit like the blogs, just to see how your progress is going. Last night I got this to fire up for the very first time. I wasn't actually expecting it to, because my original intention was to get the engine turning over on the starter and build up some oil pressure. So what I'd done was removed the fuel filter from down there so that, well, theoretically the engine wouldn't have any fuel and it wouldn't run. But when I actually jumped the starter, it fired into life, so there must have been sufficient fuel between the fuel pump and each of the injectors to cough it into life. And it was nuts really, because it didn't crank, it didn't struggle. Just as soon as I jumped the starter wires over there where that relay should be, bang, straight into life, and it ran perfect. It was dark, so I didn't see how much smoke was coming out the back. I presume quite a lot, but it only ran for 5 or 6 seconds, but no nasty ticking, just, you know, good, honest, regular diesel beat. So couldn't have been happier really. So plan today is to fill the coolant system, because there's absolutely nothing in there at the moment, and I've also bought myself a can of cooling system flush, so I'm just going to put plain water in with the hose, add the coolant flush, then I'm going to crank it again, but this time I know there's no fuel in there, so that'll allow me to see what's happening with the oil pressure. Hopefully the warning light will be going on there. Hopefully that's all connected. I've checked the wiring and I've looked at the multi-plugs and that all seems good. So that's the plan. Oh, god damn it, this thing is empty. Just a bit of a walk around. You can see how rotten this thing is. That's probably the frilliest, nastiest, worst bit, and it's on a door panel, so that's not the end of the world. Well, that wasn't too difficult. I'm just disconnecting rad hoses and expecting that one to be an absolute fight. Came off a piece of piss. So there's absolutely no coolant in the wet there whatsoever. I'm just going to shove the hose pipe in the top of the rad, blow it out the bottom. I'm going to remove some of these other coolant lines as well, just to flush as much out as I can before I bother putting this stuff in. There we go. Yeah, hopefully that'll do something good. Okay, I have shoved that hose and water through as many different orifices as I could get access to, including the heater matrix, which was that one down there. To be honest, that was the grubbiest bit, as you might expect. The rest of the car was pretty clean. There's a bit of scale come out of the rad, but to be quite honest, it's not as bad as I thought it might be. Flushing done, I have taken off as many of the hoses as I could get access to, just whacked the hose pipe in there, blasted it through for, I don't know, several minutes each port. The worst of the lot was the heater matrix, as you might expect, but even that wasn't so bad. We've got some scale come out of the radiator, but compared to some cars, especially that Rover 800 Vitesse I had, which was just run on plain water, this thing's looking really good. There's some more of the scale, no real nasties, so it's time to start putting it back together again. All back together again. I've put that coolant flusher in, and then I've brimmed the fuel system but left the header tank cap off. Batteries are connected, the fuel filter is still off, and I'm not going to bother preheating the glow plugs, so I'm just going to crank it. I've got my catch tray down there. Get that in a better position. So that's going to catch any diesel that comes out. In fact, I might empty that of the water first so that it doesn't just flood out. But yeah, plan is crank it, look for oil pressure, and if that's all good, start it. Right, I've got the ignition on, glow plugs are going and off, fuel filter's still off. I don't have low pressure warning light, but I do have low indicated, so I'm going to use the actual needle as my guide as to whether I'm getting oil pressure or not. This is my jumper fly lead because the start relay's died, so I'm just going to crank it for a bit and then go and check the needle and see if we've got pressure. Don't want to burn the starter out. See if there has been a flicker of movement. Nope, doesn't appear to be. Let's have another go. I don't actually know where the oil pressure sender is on this, because I haven't checked any of the wiring, so it could be getting pressure, but it's just not showing on the gauge. So you can hear the coolant slopping around now. No, still nothing. Not good. Well, it's not that it's not good, it's just that I would like to see that move before I start it again. Starter sounds happy though. I must be imagining things. I thought that had moved, but I'm not sure. Right, I'm going to just check my fuel's not pissing out of the emergency collector I made down there, and I'll have another go. I've been doing a bit more poking, and now I have an oil pressure light, which is good. The other interesting thing is, when I was cranking it, somehow I heard a gulp, and there's loads of water in my airbox, so I've disconnected that front hose because it had some water in it. Fortunately nothing's got in the turbo, so I don't think anything's been ingested, but I will give it another crank now and see what happens. I've put the fuel filter in and I've bled it out through the bleed nipple there, so it'll be a bit clattery at first, but hopefully it'll settle down and start running. I've got a wad here, so if it goes runaway I can just stuff it in the turbo, hopefully install it out. One thing I didn't check was the accelerator pedal is on the way up. Yep, it is, because the other day I think it idled quite high because either the choke was out or the accelerator was holding it on slightly. So I think that should be no choke, because I don't, it's tried to fire. Yeah, I'm going to be learning as I go with this car. But yeah, I'm going to jump it again and see what happens. Nothing. So look at what the oil pressure is doing. Still showing red. I shall do some more poking. Right, that's disappointing. After all that cranking, I now have insufficient battery power to actually get it to start. I've bled it up. It did try and fire, but then it shut down again. So I'm going to give it one last go. I've accidentally been leaving the ignition on as well, which probably didn't help the batteries. I'm not expecting it to go, but I thought I'd have a go anyway. Yeah, it's just not going to spin over fast enough at that rate. So I'll have to put the batteries on charge over the weekend and then try again on Monday. Right, I have just had this running, but it revs its tits off, as if it's going, what's it called, runaway. It was running. Right, thick. Good thing is we're getting oil pressure now. Glow plugs on, glow plugs off, oil pressure now working. But yeah, it starts to go runaway. I don't know whether that's because I've disconnected the airbox or what. So obviously some work to do there. The fuel pump has this one here which is attached to the throttle cable, then it has this one here which is some kind of choke mechanism, but I don't know quite how it's working or what it needs in terms of boost sensing or all the rest of it to set its idle. I have disconnected all of this air intake trunking, so whether that's got something to do with it, I'm not sure. So anyway, I'm going to have a read up on the weekend, but at least it mechanically sounds okay. But I don't want to start it again in case it revs its tits off and then blows up. Right, super happy update time. I was worried my engine was goosed. It's not. Basically, the throttle cable is seized and this rod should be returning so that that stop hits that threaded thing. Basically, it's sitting at part throttle at the moment, which is why it revved its tits off. So it's not burning diesel oil, it's not actually going runaway. I just need a new accelerator cable. So fingers crossed I can find one.